Okay, we're going to look at InDesign today. I don't know, depending on who you took for foundations, how in depth they looked at it. So I'm gonna kind of come at this from a beginner's point of view, like you might not have done it before. I'm not gonna go through all the tools. I can provide those to you if you need them, but basically just the basics of let's make a document, let's go ahead and set up our style guides, those kinds of things. So first off, you have to decide what kind of file you want in InDesign. And it knows that sometimes people are going to set up print, some for web. A lot of this is not, this one is a little bit like Illustrator where you don't set a PPI for the document. That's based on what you bring into it. So if you have a 300 PPI image and you bring it in, then it's going to be okay for print. But if you brought in a 72, that's going to be difficult unless your image is really, really large. So we don't figure that setting out. For this particular document, for your brand guide, we're assuming it's going to be online, but we're going to set it up like print because it is possible somebody could print this out. You won't for class, but that's the assumption. Remember that InDesign thinks in picas, and that's a standard in actual printing, like the physical process of printing. We don't think through that though. So my guess is that sometimes the printers might switch back over to this mode, although they have many other software that they plug things into. Majority of printers nowadays only take PDFs, but they'll be able to edit files if somebody messed up, so they'll typically still ask for your INDD files. So I usually would just say right away, switch your document to something that you're going to actually know. Obviously, for most of us, it's going to be inches. You're going to need multiple pages. I'm not too particular about which, if you want a vertical or horizontal or a square. Obviously, for square, it would print out a little bit awkwardly. So I would say, for that reason, a lot of people would just go with a standard 8.5 by 11. If you know right away you're going to do more, you might want to just set up at least 2. You'll probably need minimum 5 just to be able to put everything together. There is a trend out there where people are trying to cram everything onto one page. I find that really overwhelming. I'm just like, it's a lot of information. It takes a really long time to be able to even set that up as a designer. So I don't think it's worth the trouble for this one. If you want it for your portfolio, after you have all of your stuff done, then by all means take some time and try to reconfigure it on a page. Or maybe you show both in your portfolio, that would be okay too. But it is a lot of work to put down that much information onto one page and make it look really good. It has to be a heavily branded page. So I'm just gonna go with, I assume it'll probably be about 5. And I think it might depend on your logo. Some of the times if you want to do a horizontal or vertical format. We're not going to have to worry too much about the columns. I just keep it with standard. If you had a really thick book and you knew that there were times where, like when you're cracking open a thick book, like the way that curve comes out, it's hard to read text sometimes on that column in the middle. We call it the gutter. That's probably the only time where you'd want to really bypass the defaults and make it really chunky just to be on the safe side. Bleed and slug is just information for the printer, so you don't need that down here. But for printing, you would need a bleed. I'm not going to require it for this document, but just remember that the standard is going to be a 0.25 on all sides, so it's like 0.125 for everything except for the inside. There's nothing for the inside of a book because your folded pages wouldn't be, your inside of the book wouldn't be cut off, otherwise it would just be like a spiral bound. Margins are set by you. These are the defaults. So remember when you set up like a Word document, it's going to give you typically probably 1 inch on all sides, maybe a little bit more on the bottom. That's up to you. If you know you like a lot of space, then you can go ahead and just set it up a little bit differently. If you know you like less, then set it up less, but that's just the standard. But you're not beholden to it. It has nothing to do with printing. Other than that, you never want something too close to the edge. And also remember that as humans, we are very used to reading an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, right? We get fatigue if we have to read farther than that, because that's a lot to keep going, and then switch lines, and then keep going and keep going. So we don't try to, I would never go past 8 inches to try for text that you're supposed to read. I would opt for a lot less than that because it is easier to read that way. All right, so we've got all that stuff basically set up. You can certainly do a preset name. That's fine, but it won't save it yet. And then we'll just hit create. This is the first, I just updated the InDesign, so we'll see if there's any funkiness that pops up. I must have remembered where I had my stuff last time, even though it's a newer version. I'm gonna switch my workspace to Essentials because I always do that for everything just to be consistent, so that's what mine's gonna look like. I don't particularly like the way that the tools show up, so sometimes I'll just move some things around. I'll just reset it though, I just lost it. There we go. Is that collapse or make it double? Okay. So in a lot of ways, this looks a lot like Illustrator. Doesn't look like Photoshop, that's for sure, but it looks a lot like Illustrator. And if we look at our pages, we've got, just like I set up 5, so there it is. Remember that because it's a book, like everything about InDesign assumes a book. So the first page is always going to be like that interior page. This does not include the outside covers. This is only the guts of the book. So first one, you always have that single sheet, and then your last one should be single. If, like, I'm not too worried about a printing of a book right here, because so I have an odd number, but if I knew I had to send it to the printer, I would have an even number, so that last page would show up down there. There are some things, I'm not going to go over tools and stuff like that because the majority of these you guys have seen already in Illustrator, and I know you've at least touched InDesign before for this class. Some basics though. Right now I don't have any kind of masters set up, but you can have many, many masters. So that means some people might just do like a colored background every other page, or they always have some sort of little design element that pops up. Rather than you having to put it on every page, you set it up in your master document so you never have to think about it again. And if you're just like, well, I'm going to need to make it bigger, then you update it in the one master and it updates all of your coinciding pages. So it is helpful to do that stuff. Probably for this one, since it's a shorter document, you might not need to set that up, but guaranteed for larger pages, or excuse me, larger books, it makes a lot of sense to set them up. And you can have many parents. You can base a new parent based on an old parent. So but for the defaults, just as like a quick, harsh demo, I'll just put a big old shape on here so you can see it pop up. You won't see it yet. Let's do blue. Okay, so now you can obviously see all of the side pages are now blue. If I'm like, well, I want my right side to be a different color, and now all of your coinciding pages will do that. So it's super helpful, but you might not need it for this particular one. So I'll get rid of them because those are bright, but very convenient to be able to use that. Adding pages is easy, you just do the plus, but you can also go up to the top and insert pages how you want. What I like about the insert pages bar rather than just hitting the plus key is you get to determine exactly where you want that new page. So if you had a 50-page book and you needed to put a new page before or after that last one, you can specify that, or you can just say at the very beginning or at the very end. It's nice, and you can also, of course, set how many. And if you have your parents set up, you tell it which parent to follow. So in this case, I mean, it thinks I'm live and I've done something, so it's showing up, but otherwise it would probably be at none. All right. Now, for placing images, and this includes graphics, photos, your AI files, your PSD files. It'll take anything that's like a heavy-hitting original file. You don't have to technically export everything into a more digestible format. Sometimes it's nice to have something that you can update so that on the fly you can do it. But that does mean, though, that your Illustrator files have to be very neat and tidy, and that sometimes is maybe more work than you want to have to go through. So if there's something about InDesign you're not loving, it's showing something up weird, or maybe you're like, well, actually for this one I need it, well, let's just go see. So over in Preferences, you can go to General first. You just kind of see some of the basic stuff. This is just like Illustrator too. What do you want your interface to look like? Do you want it gray, white, black, etc.? You can all figure that stuff out. The stuff I tend to shift the most are units and increments. And do I want them to think in inches? Because I had ticked that box, it is showing up like this. But I'll say for anything relating to stroke or font, I keep as points. It's just easier if you have that general sense of this is what a 1 point looks like, this is what a 5 point looks like, and then you just kind of carry that consistency across everything that you do. Grids, I don't know if you'd need them for this particular class, but it's very helpful to be able to set that up. So you get to determine how many increments, how many do you need, where do you want it to start. It's even more intense than Illustrator is when you're setting up your grids. And then a document grid. Sometimes, remember colors can be if they're matching what your color scheme is a little too much, they can be difficult. So you may want to change some of these, and then again you can decide how your grid should look. So those are some of the aspects. I'm trying to think, what else do I change pretty often? Actually, those are the basics that I typically change, but you can see that there's a heck of a lot more that you can manipulate, especially if your files are really massive and you have a lot of stuff stuffed in them. You may want to look at file handling because it'll start to drag your machine a little bit. So let's see. These are the defaults. I'm trying to think of anything else I might want to change. Not too much. As you get to be more of an expert in InDesign, there are things that you'll just do a lot or prefer a certain way, and then you'll just visit that again. Now, guides and grids, I'm not going to turn those on for you, but grids work the same way. If you have your rulers up, then you get to pull and drag from the top and the bottom, which is helpful. You can see that the margin that was set up as the default is purple and pink. Remember, you're not beholden to that. That's just like a helpful guide to don't put your text past here, essentially. Layers are here, and you can control them just the same way that you would in Illustrator. You might need to move some things around. You might need to lock some things down. Those are all valid things to do. The one thing that I don't love about this, I understand why they use it, but in this particular program, a link is an image or an asset or a graphic. Anything that you've brought in is considered a link, because the way for InDesign is typically not going to be to place your images where they're stuck inside your file. You want to link it to the image that exists, because that way if you want to edit an image, like, oh, that Photoshop needs to be updated, you don't want to have to delete it out of your file, go to Photoshop, edit it, and then bring it back in. It's a lot easier if it has that link to it, and it'll know when it updates. The other reason we don't do that I like to use the idea of a seed catalog. If any of you guys have grown up around something like that, those things are massive, monster, huge catalogs. And if you can imagine that all those images were packed inside of an InDesign file, how heavy that file would be. It would become difficult to open, difficult to move anything. And so if you have links to images instead of the actual images, your file is light comparatively. Now, when you get ready to send it to a printer, then you have to package everything, and it'll drag all of the images that are relevant and stick them inside a folder for you, and that's needed. But otherwise, as long as you keep track of where your folders are, it shouldn't be too difficult. If you're ever missing a link, or let's say you move a file or a folder, depending on how complex your image sorting system is, it'll tell you when it can't find it. So you do need to come check this to make sure your links are stable and you have access to them. Stroke, color, those things are so similar to Illustrator. Let me know if you need any help with them, but I think you'll be okay. The meaty part of this that I want to make sure you know how to use is, like I mentioned, the style guides. So there's a little bit of differences with type. You can see how small that list is. That's a short list compared to what Illustrator offers for their type options. So partly is that it can't do everything that Illustrator can do, but also partly it's a little bit more intuitive. So in Illustrator, it's got like, hey, do you want to type inside of a box? Whereas if I draw a box in this program and then I put the T tool next to it, it simply assumes I'm gonna fill it. It just is like, well, duh, like that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. Illustrator, maybe it just, yeah, that's not how it's built. Anything though, personally, I would say if you have anything complex, do it in Illustrator. I don't think it's worth the trouble in InDesign. It's just not quite as sophisticated. It's perfect for laying out tons of text. This is where you want to do it. And you know, the ability to move your text from one page to another. So if you're building a document for like a magazine, you guys all know, I mean, you guys have not probably used magazines the way that my generation did, but you know, there's little columns. And then, so how do you know where to put that remainder text? Those things are a lot easier in here. So let's see. Let me drag a box. And unlike Illustrator, it does not fill it with lorem ipsum. So I'm just going to do something real quick. I want to have enough of something to transfer over. Okay, so I'm going to make this box short. So it's like, oh, it doesn't fit. When something does not fit, you get a little red box. And that just means there's a remainder. What you have to do to move that text over is you click on that little box, and you can see that now it's got some text in it, and it's showing what's left over, actually. At this point, I could go to a different page. Oh, I'm on 6, oh well. Let me go back up to 1. And then I will just paste that in here. And then as I add more to this box, you know, this box doesn't change. But what should happen is the amount that I see is ever increasing. So if I start here, hit a return, paste, paste, paste. Oh, it's just being silly. Okay. It's immediately pushing me over to the first page because that's where the remainder text is. So I'm going to show you how much now it's grown. Yeah, there we go. So at this point now, if you're like, well, that doesn't fit either, then you got to click it again and make another little box, and then you can see the idea. So these text boxes can travel wherever you need them to. As you edit one part, it'll push over and spill into the next one. You won't need to, I don't see you encountering this, but it's just good to know that that's how you set that up. It's very much of a necessity when you have larger documents. Okay, now the part I want you guys to plan for, I am going to be asking for all your original files when you submit them for the final stuff. So what I'm doing for this one is a little different. Typically, you know, I have you do something for critique and then you turn in the final version as its own thing. But for this one, because I know you're going to be changing things, probably not the logo, but definitely as you do the box, you're going to change the brand guide. That just happens every time because you realize, oh shoot, I didn't think about that. I need something else. So what'll happen in the end is after we do those 3 components of box, brand guide, and logo, you're going to take all those things and submit them all together for the final end. I'm asking for those at the end of like the last day of class, but I'll take them through Saturday the 13th if you just, you know, need a little bit more time. Remember, I'm also taking the mock-ups that late, and that's why I'm allowing these things to be turned in a lot later, because if, you know, I'd rather have your updated box rather than the first version that maybe you hadn't fleshed out completely yet. So what are some standards that we need for a page like for a brand guide? You're going to be needing things like the logo variations, colors, what else am I requiring? Those are the main parts, I guess. And you might need, so you're going to need a big header for what the page is about. You might need subheaders that are defining things, and then you're going to need regular body copy. You might need some little italics. Think of the very, very basics, and that's what I would want to see in your styles. So I'm going to set up a couple things here, just like basic boxes. So guides, another one of let's just say secondary titles. and body copy. So remember that your brand guide should follow the same rules that you are setting up for other people to follow. So your colors need to match your stuff. Your fonts need to match. I shouldn't see a foreign font. If you haven't listed it as a font in your font list, it sure better not be actually being used in your brand guide, so be consistent with that. Now, under window, we have text stuff. So if you go to your type and tables, we have a lot of things under here. And sometimes, depending probably on what mode you're set up into, when you click one thing, another thing pops up next to it. So character is pretty solitary. Let's see, I know some of these come up with others. Paragraph. Okay, well, if you want them joined, you can just grab the tabs and put them right next to each other so you can have a more consolidated area. I know most of us are on smaller laptops. So that's one thing to do. And then we also have a completely separate area for styles. Styles are, there's a couple different kinds. We have character styles, we've got paragraph styles. Object styles I'm not going to have us do, but that's something if you had a lot of, specific ways that you wanted like all of your images to have drop shadows and an outline and all that good stuff, you can do it. So typically when you open up character styles, it also will have paragraph styles kind of right next to it. So just know that you don't always have to drop that down as a separate entity. There are some presets, so you could borrow some. Ooh, well, I guess that's Christmassy, right? Let's go look at the characters. Now, because, let's see with this one. If you start with one of these presets, you can already see this. I have this box selected and I said to do a heading. So instantly I've got red text, just like it said it would. If I select secondary text and do subheading, you get the idea. Like it's already pre-programmed in here. And then they've already programmed also a bulleted list, numbers list, etc. So those are really basic. And that's fine. If I wanted to start off completely scratch, let me just go back and remove that. Oh, too far. Oh, I really went too far. Okay, that should be it. All right. Now when I look back at this basic stuff, it's all empty. Character's empty, so that's good. Now, there are differences between paragraphs and your character style. Character styles are very specific things you would do to, let's say that there was an interruption in a letter. There's a color change, there's a size change. If you do a paragraph style, think of it like when you set up a paragraph style in Word. For those of us, that's probably the thing we've used the most. The whole entire section becomes the same style. To have to change a thing in the middle, it doesn't like it. You have to then go to the individual letters and change them out. So it's the same idea. So we've got character styles here I would do after. I guess I would say character styles are deviations from your paragraph styles. That's probably the easiest way to think about them. They're very specific. So basic paragraph is set up. We can kind of look at what it's doing. It has no setup yet. When you double click on the item, then you get all these options. And you can see that there's a ton of things you can do. We won't need all of these, but the basic ones we will. So basic characters, what do we want for our main font? So whatever you're listing in your brand guide as the font needs to show up here. Let's choose, I don't even know what that font is. We'll get a surprise. Do you want it regular? This one probably only has regular. So depending on the font you choose, the font family might be massive, it might not be. Choose the size. I'm going to make it larger just so you can kind of read it a little bit better. You can change the leading right off the bat. You want more, go ahead and add it. You can change tracking. If you know you want some extras, go ahead. So you can even do underline, strike through. I don't know why you'd need that, but you get the idea. The other things are superscripts, subscripts, all that good stuff. These things, though, keep in mind, they're for an entire section of, like, a whole paragraph of text or more. So if you wanted something superscript or subscript, that would be better as a character style instead, where you can click on just a letter or two and then modify them there. The other thing you do right away is if you want any optional things, like your font's a little bit stubby, you can make it taller. You can change the baseline shift if you need to. I don't think I've ever done that on purpose. Alignments, if it's left, right, centered, etc. Everything that you can pretty much possibly do to text is going to be listed here. In all honesty, I probably do the basic character formats and character color, and I don't I don't work in Indesign a ton anyway, but that's the basics. If you had set up your colors ahead of time and you had more colors in your swatches, then you could choose it from here. And this does definitely help as you are creating variations in your brand guide. Make sure that you add them here too. The other thing you do here, though, is I wish that this said opacity. This is really what that tint means. It's opacity. So like, for example, sometimes I won't even add a gray. I'll just choose black and make it 20% or 40%. That tends to be the way that I do it, but you can certainly set up a separate gray. Let me do a bright color, and it's obnoxious so we can see it. So now, because I have not yet defined what my title will be, my secondary title, etc., everything went to red and everything went to that font size. So anything that's on there. Now I'll go ahead and set up a new one. Paragraph style 1, that's not an appropriate name really. So I'm going to hit my control click and change this, and I'll do header first. Oh, I did it too fast. So here, if you set something up, like I could set it up as my basic paragraph styles, and it'll come up now with the same font I chose. Everything comes up the same. This can be really helpful. And then all I need to do is essentially raise the size. I'll go ahead and change the color just for emphasis. And now, because I've chosen that particular box, you can see that I can toggle back and forth between basic and header. So I would say that your first round as you're setting things up can take a little bit of time. There have been lots of situations where I've got the document almost done and it's like, oh, it's really hard to fit all that body copy. They only want it on this number of pages. They don't. So I'll then go back and do things like very, very tiny edits to all the paragraph copies. So it'll be like just a little bit tinier or just a little bit less leading to try to eke out a little bit more wiggle room. So it's super helpful to have everything set up ahead of time. Yes, setup takes time, but is way less time than having to fidget and fuss with all the individual things later. So at minimum for ours, you should need some sort of header. I would say, a subhead would be helpful. However you want to list that. I mentioned this last class, but I would avoid anything that's too particular. So like I don't use colors because over time I've realized they always change. There's no point. Just what is its basic function, and that's how I go with it. So header, subhead 1, subhead 2. I'm trying to think. I'd probably say on average I have 10 set up in mine because I account for basic paragraph styles as well as those little character deviations that I'm allowing here and there. Copy. And then if you're going to use things like your bullets, then you can set something up for those kinds of things also. Let's see, I'll just do my subhead again. And if I want to base it on, let's say that I base it on now that I've set up a header, I could base it on the header, but maybe in this case I just change one thing. I'll do all caps, I'll do all caps just so we can see it. A little bit smaller. And now you can kind of see how that works too. Body copy I'll leave for now. I just want you to be able to feel like you can function in it, utilize them. Sometimes as designers, we're given documents that are already set up, and if you do not continue to use those brand guides and then you give it back to that other person, oh, they will not like you at all. Now they got to go fix everything and or make you fix it. So it's just know that if you receive an InDesign document from somebody else, they're going to have styles in it, and you got to be able to work with them. And then you need to be able to set up your own, or sometimes just add one or two. That's highly likely. What else about them? Well, that's probably it. It's not like it's difficult. It's just, you just gotta take a little bit of time to set it up at the beginning. Character, I'll show you character, even though it's not that complicated. I won't even name it. I'll just leave it at that. So for this one, come on. You can see that there's a little bit less to deal with. General, again, you can base it on something if you already had created one. In this case, the only thing I'm going to ask it to do is change color, just so we can see it quickly. Let's do a green change. Okay. So that means it's a pretty open thing. If I click now on that particular letter and click character style, all it'll do is change it to green. So I can go into any of these now and switch greens as I need to. So rather than setting it up, so for example, if I did have something fancy in my brand guide and I wanted things to have 2 colors, 3 colors, etc., I can't really do that in one paragraph style. I would have to set it up as a basic one. And then just remember that character styles, yes, they can be extremely elaborate. You can have every single thing here changed, or it can be really simple. A lot of times I'll just take something and make it italics. That's the one difference I'll need. Or a color change. I try to keep my character changes to a minimum and try to do as much as I can with the paragraph styles. So that's the difference. Individual changes for character, most likely all your content should be controlled by the paragraphs. Anybody have any questions about InDesign off the bat? Anything you like, oh, I don't remember how to do this. I feel like I know I should. Remember, alignment stuff is all, pretty much everything you can do in Illustrator will be here somewhere, but they don't always put it in the exact same spot. What else here? When you export, of course, you're going to save your file. I'm asking you to submit your packaged file for me. So when you do that, actually, let me add a link in here. I didn't do that yet. So if I was going to do something like I don't remember what I have here. I've got a lot of stuff on my machine. See. I don't remember what this image is. Here's a midterm image. Okay, well, that one's safe. So here's my midterm image. When I drop my image, if I just click once and drop it, it does the exact same size that it actually is. Otherwise, I can drag and drop a box for it and control where it goes. Remember that to move an image around, you have to use the direct selection tool, and then you can change it within the box or whatever shape you have needed. A lot of people like to use these little rectangle frames to indicate where a future image might go. So if you're like, I know there needs to be an image here, I'm not going to mess with it yet, but at some point either somebody else has to deal with that or you will later. Maybe you're doing a photo shoot still and you don't have the images yet. This is what this stuff is for. So it's a placeholder, and a lot of people will also just use these to, they'll select their particular shape that they have and then go ahead and place. If you have one pre-selected, that does make it easier. Then you can just click on it and it knows exactly where to drop it. Obviously it cropped it, so I would then maybe need to go in and modify the image a little bit more so it fits a little bit, but you get the idea there. So I have now, if I go to my links, I have one image, and you're like, well, I used it, and it's using 2 instances of it, so I've got those 2 there. If I move that it's going to get that error message, a little red, tiny angry exclamation point pops up, and you need to click on it and help you find where you put that image. Maybe, you could have moved it accidentally. So you need to go locate it, or you need to go find it and pop it back into the folder that it was told that it was in. So when you are ready and your file's done, go ahead and hit save so you have your INDD file. But you also need to get used to using the package function. Package means two things. If you need to send this to somebody, it makes sure you have every tiny part of this process. This includes your fonts, because not everybody has your fonts installed on their machines, and they might need to load them. So it'll show your fonts that it's going to include, and the links in the images. That was those 2 instances of that same image. Any colors and inks that I specified that were, more than the process cyans, magenta, yellow, black. Any kind of print settings that that you've foreseen and added to. I don't bother with that stuff, but basically now you hit it package. I'm not going to do it because it takes a little bit of time. But the one thing I want to forewarn you about is when it makes a package, it is locating. So you all know that you have different personalities. Some of you are extremely organized and can't function unless all your stuff is in the right folder. And the rest of you are just kind of searching for stuff and plopping in wherever you want. To each their own. At the end, though, you need every single bit of this. So if you had 20 images from 20 different folders, that's annoying to have to go find those and make sure you have those parts. So whether or not this is to a printer or just to somebody else who has to work with your file, this is what you got to do. So hit package. Now, if you are low on space on your machine, you need to be aware of this. It makes copies of all those images from all those different places and puts them all together for you in case you're the unorganized type of person. So if you're short on space, they basically doubled your images. It's helpful, and it doesn't know what else to do and how to do it, but I just want to forewarn you. You'll want to get rid of those extras after you're done if you're low on space. So you hit package, and it's making a new folder, and it's plopping everything in. So it makes a copy of your INDD file. It makes a PDF for you. It does as many things as it possibly can think of. If you had set up any slugs, like those directions to the printers, those would also be created, typically like just a text file. So you'll need to do that for me, and then zip it. The other thing you're going to take that zipped folder, you're going to take all your AI folder, anything that's got stuff, and so you're going to have a full folder before you zip that final one and submit that. So I just need all your stuff. I still would like PDFs of everything, but this way I can go actually check, did they do styles? Did they create their logo from scratch? All that good stuff. That just ensures it. So I would say InDesign is probably the least used for me, but I'm very glad I at least know the basics, because there's been times where I'll get randomly hired to do some, like, they're typically favors. It'll be like a non-prep. It's like, please, we're really needing this. And we don't know who to go to for it. And then sometimes I'll recommend people, but I just, sometimes you get guilted into doing projects for people. And then I get to hone my InDesign skills and make like a brochure or make a short little booklet or something for them. So it's not my usual thing, but when I'm so thankful for styles and things like that when I have to set up. Now, if you have not used styles in Illustrator before, once you know how to do them in InDesign, it's the exact same thing. So remember, do not do multiple page documents in Illustrator if you can help it. It's not worth the trouble. We all know, like, moving pages around, artboards are terrible. Sometimes I'll resort to moving my pages around after I export a PDF, but that stuff's easy to forget. So if I ever have to do more than a page, I basically just move everything over to InDesign so I can control where the stuff is going. Okay, so that's all I have for presentation for today. Some of you, I might need to go look at your logos, either because you've changed them or you need to know how to do something. So call me over and we will be done with this video.